Welcome to Scribbler to Scribe. I'm your host, David Scribbler Wishart, and I'm joined by my co-host, resident scribe, Pastor Ronnie Smith from Peace Lutheran Church. We invite you on a spiritual journey to explore questions of faith in the human experience. If you're searching for more meaning in your life, you're not alone. So join us as we search for wisdom and personal growth through a theological lens.
Right?
Yep.
So the sort of reddish, darker brick houses there that back onto the GO train parking lot.
Yep. Slash the lake.
Yep.
It's all about that view.
Exactly. Yeah, we missed that.
Even though I gotta, peek through the trees,
Sure.
I'll take every scrap of blue I can get.
Exactly. Just build a tree fort up in one of your trees in the back there.
It's kind of funny because I wouldn't mind trimming some of the neighbors' trees.
Oh yeah.
Just the dead branches that are in the way.
Right. Yeah, is my lighting okay? I don't know. Like this is daylight.
Yeah, can see you fine.
Okay.
With that natural vibe.
Pardon my language. Okay. I don't know what we have queued up. I have an idea for a night, but I just want to see what we've covered of our list of topics that we had originally conceived of.
Mm-hmm.
I got to upload the next episode tonight. I'm supposed to do that on Wednesdays, and then I spaced last week. I had my hockey pool meets that we were meeting.
Yeah.
That's
playoffs or something.
It's like the trade deadline, last day that you can make trades in the pool. So we all got together and I did that.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good in my hockey pool. My basketball pool was a gong show.
Okay.
Not that I know anything. I just look for. I'm the waiver wire master, I guess.
All right, there you go. What kind of league is it?
I think it's like a 9 category.
So like a rotisserie league?
Say. Not really sure what all the different ones are, but you play the same opponent for the week.
Okay.
And you win or lose.
Yeah. That's a head-to-head. And you probably like win in each of the 9 categories. So whoever wins the most of the 9, so whoever it's at least 5.
Right.
How it goes, yeah.
Yeah.
Ours
the basketball one I'm in, though, it's sort of cumulative. If you win like 8-5, that record carries to the next week. And if you're like 4-9, then you're like 12-13 or whatever.
Right.
So it adds up. Whereas the hockey one is just you win or lose on the week, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I played a football one that was the head-to-head. The one I'm in for hockey's just you accumulate stats in each of the different categories and you get ranked based on all the people in the pool. So if you're the first in goals, you get 11 points because there's 11 teams. Second in goals gets 10 points and down to the bottom.
That sounds pretty good. That's rotisserie?
Yeah. But you have like a certain X number of games that you can play. And so you need to be able to manage the total games you use, not go overboard and like keep slot in players off the waiver wire and stuff who just end up like eating up your game total, who might be not as good as like your premium guys.
Right. I have an eye for people that are flash in the pan or coming out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Hot streaks.
Right. Who's the latest for you there?
I did most of my heavy lifting earlier in the season. Of late, can't say I did anything too notable. Just, it's been a lot of injury substitutes, really.
Right. Do you guys play keeper pool where you keep guys from one season to the next, or is it a full just draft?
Draft every year.
Yeah. Ours is a keeper. So we keep 12, drop 12. But one guy in our pool has basically all the best players. He's got McDavid, Matthews, and McKinnon at center. of his 3 center slots. It's insane. It doesn't make any sense. And he's Andre Vasilevsky as his goalie, and so it's all just brutal. So he's winning this year, needless to say. But he gets to keep all those guys next year, basically.
I guess it's a closed ecosystem then, eh? How do you get new people in there?
We've added guys, but they've been like kind of expansion draft players who like, yeah, you'll be good in like 7 years, maybe. You can wait that long.
Yeah. Sounds a bit tough to crack into that one.
Yeah, it kind of feels like we need to kind of reset it periodically, but he's done the guy who's in first has basically sold all his draft picks off. So he's like drafts all of his 12 guys in basically the last round next year. So he's doing his best to even the playing field.
Can you trade draft picks?
You can, yeah.
Sweet.
All right, so I'm just looking at our list.
There's room to finagle in there, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So, and we track some stats like penalty minutes and hits and blocks and stuff, and the premium guys don't give you those, right? So there's still room to catch up in other areas.
Yeah.
So,
Welcome to Scribbler to Scribe.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm looking at our list, but I don't want to talk about those things. So I got another thing that I just happened today, and I think that probably a lot of people are feeling this right now. So I want to talk about some situations maybe in the Bible that have come up, or some learnings, or just your own experiences in this area. But it's really this sort of idea of feeling kicked when you're down. And so it seems like sometimes it just things don't feel fair, or, you know, things are already hard and they just keep getting harder. And we try to stay resilient, but there's only so far you can get, trying to maintain all that on your own. And so I just want to hear your thoughts on how, one, you personally deal with, when things are tough and feel kind of kicked when you're down, how you pull yourself back up, or, where do you turn in those moments? But then also just, when we think about scripture and some of the different stories or theological teachings, like what do they talk about in terms of, managing the hard times?
Those are some really good questions, but I'm wondering if first you'd be able to give me a bit more context where this is coming from, I guess.
So as you're aware, but maybe our listeners aren't, my wife has type 1 diabetes. And so that is, a regular health challenge. Her situation is a little bit unique, but because she found it as an adult. Most times people are diagnosed with like this autoimmune disease when they're a child or they're a teenager, and she found out as an adult. And so, that makes it harder in some ways because you haven't kind of grown up with it. So it becomes as somewhat more of a shock potentially. But, aside from that, you just occasionally, like, things will crop up where, in our day to day, where we're like, oh, this, it becomes a challenge again. And some days are good days, some days are bad days. So as with the COVID vaccine, we started to look at, booking appointments to get that done. And so, but, because that, having an underlying, autoimmune disorder, like, you have to be more careful about this kind of stuff. And so, in doing some of our research and everything, Sunny stumbled across some medical journal material that talked about that potentially the vaccines could cause the disease to progress more rapidly. So she still has a little bit of her pancreatic function. Most people who are type 1 don't, and that potentially that's at risk by taking the vaccine. But by the same token, and this doesn't mean to be like anti-vaxxer or anything like that, it's just, by the same token, not taking it has its own risks, right? And so, and then we're scary times here in Ontario at the moment. So it feels like really in a rock and a hard place. Like, reading that was very, depressing. And I mean, it's a medical journal. Still have to talk to the doctors and the endocrinologists and just speak with the professionals and get their opinions. But the issue is they'll give an opinion, but that's their medical opinion. They're not living the life of it and what that means. And they're not carrying the emotional weight of that necessarily. And so because they aren't carrying the emotional weight of that situation, their answers could be quite like clinical, and that doesn't always work for us. Like, you just don't understand the kind of the gravity of the situation necessarily. And so, they'll use language like, oh, well, you're going to lose that extra, function anyway. And, it was inevitable that you become totally insulin dependent later in life. But, that's what they were saying nearly 7 years ago. And she's still managing, right, with, diet and exercise. And so I'm like, well, how much do we want to put this at risk? And so it's just created this whole turmoil. And we're just like, oh my gosh, like, why can't anything be easy? So I just give you an idea where we're coming from. I've already started to feel a little better since like this mid-afternoon, and kind of found that out. But just when it happened, it was sort of like, oh my gosh, come on, this is brutal. So yeah, that's the background, if you want to use that as part of the context, when you think about what you're going to say.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate that. Daring to be vulnerable first in front of everyone takes a lot of guts. This is a situation where I don't know how useful I can be, to be honest. I've not had to go through something like that. And so, I think anything I say might be sort of waxing philosophic or something. It's totally, like you say, it's totally different when it's you. I couldn't appreciate the emotional piece of what that, sure, I could get a gist of it sort of just practically speaking, but I wouldn't know what it's like to live with that. But I do come across that, people in tough situations a lot in this line of work, of course. And, there's times when the best thing I can do is to simply just walk with them and let them get it out. It's not that I have any advice per se to impart. I'm not able to solve the problem, right? But humans feel better the minute they begin to share. And so, I can be an agent of rejuvenation, I guess, or strength, or some of these things that help people get through it. But I'm a bit out of a loss as to what to say, how I, cope with a situation like that. I'm one of those always cheery kind of people that my wife drives my wife nuts a lot of times. Like, why are you so darn cheery all the time? And I don't know what I did to be this way. I've just always felt very blessed. I've always felt like, God was watching over me. Like, I could really feel that. And it's given me just sort of a courage to just dare to live. And that's kind of what gets me through the darker times. I mean, we all have our ups and downs. We're all experiencing some kind of emotional, mental fatigue with COVID. Over a year now we've been in this, and it's worse than it's ever been. You know, I look to my family for support, of course. My wife and my kids give me great strength and energy. They give me a lot of great perspective. It enables me to live a life out of gratitude. But from a strictly personal, individual point of view, I would have to say my number one coping mechanism in my life has been playing music. That's the one thing that nobody can sort of get in the way, I guess. When I'm playing music, I feel like it gets, as a drummer, maybe it's different for me than others, but as a drummer, there's a meditative quality about what I do, I guess, you know, just spending a couple hours just pounding out beats. It's just very therapeutic. It helps me align my body, mind, and spirit. But that's not something I can give to the next person. You know, I can share music, and I can come together in community with others to do that and uplift through that, but I can't pass on that sort of coping mechanism. Like, you either have to be into music or not. But I do think that there are we all have something that we're passionate about. That's kind of our go-to piece. What often happens, especially as you get older, you start to have kids and family and jobs and all that, is we tend to neglect that self-care piece. And then over the years, it really grinds us down when we don't have that in our day-to-day. So I guess, you know, that's something I've been trying to rediscover, I guess, because I had a bit of a dark period with as far as music goes. But the past couple of months, I've been making a point of just attacking it every single day, like no excuses. I don't let myself off the hook. And I feel so much better. My family life improves, my work improves, my relationships. So I guess my advice then would be to ask people, what's your one thing that you're passionate about that gives you release? And maybe you've sort of lost your way a little bit there, but this is the time to sort of rediscover what it is that makes you you. I know you're a musician. I'm sure you can relate to that in some way.
Yeah, you know, music was more of that for me years ago. Definitely not so much lately. You know, the last time I played in a band was 2011, maybe 2010. Right. So it's been over 10 years now. I can't believe how the time's gone by, you know. So I do miss it. Like, it's fun. I think that when you get into into music, or you just get into anything that you really enjoy, you kind of lose yourself in it. And that can be a nice distraction from some of the other things that are going on in life. And, you know, it kind of lets you live in the moment. Right. And then I think one thing you realize when you're in the moment is that, well, like all the things I was talking about earlier, they're not happening right now. I mean, yes, there are fears and threats and what have you, like, about the future, but they're not happening this instant. And right now, you know, I had this thought earlier, like, the sun's shining, had a nice meal, you know, we're surrounded by family and pets, and, like, you know, things are good. Like, so yeah, I know that we have, you know, this health difficulty, but as I get older, I think I need to learn, appreciate that. That's just so common, right? Like, of some kind, you know, people living with some kind of health issue or whatever. And you just, as you get older and further into your 30s, I think it's at that point in your life that your parents have gotten to a more vulnerable age. For instance, you have kids, you know, have friends or your own family or significant others or you've built so many connections, right? That it's somebody's going to have something, right? Who's close to you. It could be yourself too. So there is like a certain acceptance that has to kind of come with that. And I'm getting better at accepting those things than I used to. I think I fought against them in the past. And by fighting against them, meaning like just not handling it well. Like, it doesn't mean that I'm like trying to make it go away. I don't know how to make it go away. Like, and I'm just trying to manage the anxiety or whatever that comes with all that kind of stuff. And so, these things if they bother me, they don't stick with me the way they used to. Like, that gets stuck and just hang on to me, like, forever, and feel a little bit more resilient than I was in the past. And that resilience is really just a byproduct of acceptance of the reality of what it is. But listening to the David McGinley series, and people listening, they might not be aware of that, but go to the Peace Lutheran Church's YouTube channel, you can watch a 5-part sort of Lenten series with Reverend David McGinley. I think he's the Reverend. Yeah. And so he talked about a lot of different topics there. I think what he got into is totally fascinating. But one thing I really took away from that is that, the physical experience that we're having in this world is only just one small part of our total experience that we're having over not just our life today, or living to be 80, 90 years old, but just of all time. Like, who knows, right? When it started, or when it's going to end, or if it ever does, right? It's just so this concept of time that we have is not even in the physical world around us, is some small fraction of what there really could be out there. And that when you get stuck on just this material world that we're in, I think you just get lost in these small trivial problems in the grand scheme of the universe. And you hear about people talk about near-death experiences and other like things that that have happened to them, and you think like, okay, well, it starts sounding pretty convincing. And I would have been a skeptic of a lot of that stuff. But as my faith grows, I become more open to those ideas, because I just don't think that we can really know. Like, science can't disprove a lot of these things. And so, and Dave McGinley is a great example of somebody who's a big believer in science, but he just understands that it has its limitations. And but so it's just fascinating to see these ideas, scientific ideas and religious ideas, kind of come together. That they aren't opposed in the way that maybe people think they are.
When it I guess the Bible talks a lot about body versus spirit, and a whole lot of what Jesus talks about is denying this body, and or how should I put it? He often chastises people for having their minds on earthly things when they should be on heavenly things, essentially. So in the hierarchy of being, I guess, it appears that the spirit endures beyond this physical shell. We don't really know what that's like, but we've seen glimpses of that. And I guess what David is trying to say is that science is starting to catch up with some of this ancient spirituality, and that spirituality and science are not two mutually opposed things. They actually complement each other. And so they inform each other. And it's about time we started having those kinds of conversations, in a house of spirituality, the church. But it's, pretty heavy content, and a lot of people shy away from that, and not here to judge them. But I guess humans have an incredible capacity to take things personally. I guess, you said at the beginning, why is this happening to me? It's not fair, and things like that. And I'm not here to philosophize our way out of this situation or anything like that. But I guess life is so much more than just me or just you. And we are more than just this body. Mm-hmm. All the major religions are trying to tell us this in their own particular way. Science is starting to be able to demonstrate a lot of these things that are pretty mind-blowing. But again, that's easy for me to say because I'm not the one in the situation, and I don't mean to make light of what you're going through. I'm really sorry to hear that. It's, some people, I don't understand this part about life, how some people just seem to be a magnet for misery, and some people just sort of float through scot-free, I guess. And I kind of feel like I fall into the latter camp, but I know some people that are just so up against it. And it's like you get through one crazy thing and then there's a whole nother one waiting for you. Like it just never seems to end. The book of Job, I think, is a good place to look if you're feeling like everything's against you, or
what is that? What is the moral of that story in the end?
So I guess Job is kind of tested through suffering. And there's some issues about it too. You really have to be discerning about it. God's not out there wanting people to suffer just for fun or anything like that. But here's a guy of true faith, I guess, is the real example. And then he suffers all these afflictions, and there's kind of like a commentary between God and the adversary about like how Job is going to prove his faith, kind of thing. And I don't think it's a real story, because why would God do something like that? But it's still very instructive. But it's just, the guy, Job never gives up his faith, even in spite of all these terrible things happening to him. So, as far as a scriptural reference point, that'd be a good one. But Jesus is constantly talking about spirit over flesh, I guess. And it's not that we jettison the body or we treat it with disrespect in any kind of way. That's not the message. There's a sect that are branches of different doctrines, I guess, that sort of glorify self-immolation and self-harm and things like that. We're definitely not on about that over here.
So there is this quoted line often, and I've actually been guilty of quoting it myself, and you had corrected me about it once, and Sunny brought it out another time, Sunny being my wife, for anybody who's not aware. But it's that this idea, or quote, God won't give you more than you can handle. Right? So we talk about the book of Job and suffering and all, and just hardship and feeling like kick when you're down. So it's like, well, the people who have that happen to them are the ones who have the strength to deal with it. And it's like we're being given these tasks that we need to do because we're the ones who are the leaders who will whatever carry out God's will or something. But and I wish I could find that quote because it said so much more succinctly, but really that is a very self-centered view of the world, as in it is about us as humans and people on our own, self-reliant to overcome challenges. It takes all the focus off of others, it takes all the focus off of God, and puts all the focus on ourselves. So it's a very like pull yourself up by your bootstraps type of view. Mm-hmm. And really it's maybe a bit of like propaganda that kind of in a capitalistic world that's trying to make it about the self-made man. Mm-hmm. And that the real truth to a lot of these things, and you sort of alluded to it earlier, is, even if you can't relate exactly with the circumstance, you can listen. And in the sharing and connecting with other people, you find support. And that it's not up to you alone. It's up to you to it's to have a community of people with you, family, friends, support networks who can lift you up in those times. It's not for you to lift yourself up alone, isolated, constantly facing these trials by yourself, but that you are part of, why life is so hard for some people is because they don't have those communities. They've isolated themselves, and so they're very alone, and they're faced and taking on all these problems by themselves, but they don't have to. And the more I really think about the idea that if God is anything, God is love, and that instead of envisioning God as like a, the man in the sky kind of image, right, sitting on this like white pearly throne or something like this, but rather that God is the sort of energy of love that we can cast, to others in the world. And that, like, how do you feel better when you're feeling bad? You serve others, you help, you do something for somebody else. You don't think about yourself, you think about others in the world. And if everybody is all doing that, then you're never alone, you're never isolated, and you feel confident that you're going to have a network of people around to support you through the hard times, because there's going to be hard times. And some people may suffer more than others, and that's a bit of maybe some of the just dare to say like random chaos of the physical world, because if I'm going to just philosophize or theologize, I don't know, whatever the word is right now, but just if God is not like necessarily this omnipotent being that we make him out to be, and that's a convenient image that helps us understand God, but if it's God is something different than that, but more like this, love, not necessarily controlling all the things that happen in the world. There's lots of forces in the world that cause things to go awry, and some genetic defect causes you to have a health issue that somebody else doesn't, and it's just some little string of DNA code that's a little bit off, right, or something like this, and it affects the course of your life. But it is sort of to some extent like random, but the physical world that we're in is such a small, tiny part of the whole universe that we exist in, that the only thing that we can really do in light of all that stuff is support one another and be there and love one another and have a community, be good neighbors and friends and family, because that's the only way that you can kind of make yourself resilient to the chaos of the universe, is to not go at it alone. So I used to think that sort of, God will give you more than you can handle, but I don't believe, I've turned away from believing that. I don't think that that's really true.
It's certainly a quick answer, an easy answer, and a lot of times people say things like that because they just simply don't know what else to say. So that's part of it too. What you'd said about the self-centered focus of that is certainly true too. But it's even more complex than that, I guess. Some people, they got nothing left. That's all they can reach for, and it's the last thing they've got holding them together. But I agree with your assessment about all these quote unquote self-made people running around thinking that they're islands unto themselves, I guess. But yeah, you're totally right again though too about it's about being in community that healing happens. We sat here and talked for a while. That didn't solve your issue.
Certainly doesn't make it worse though.
But some measure of reconciliation has happened, because we've spoke about it at length, and you guys have spoken about it, I'm sure.
And like one thing that I'm trying to become better at is not trying to solution something, not trying to solve a problem. If somebody brings something up to you and they tell you and they're sad and they're angry or frustrated or whatever, they're not bringing it up to you for you to make it go away. They're just looking for you to listen and empathize. And I've spent too much time trying to solve things for people. And, today, when Sonny told me this, like, I tried to not do that. Maybe I still did in some fashion, but I just agreed. I'm like, that's really disappointing. And it's hard to read that, and it really feels like it's putting you between a rock and a hard place. And I said, like, I'm sad for you. And I hate that you have to go through this. It's not fair. And I think that she just felt heard there in that moment, it just, it's nothing we can do. Like, we're just gonna take this day by day, but like, thank you for just listening. But when you try to solution and you problem solve these things, it's not clear if you are listening anymore. You're making it about like yourself. How can I fix this? Right? How can I make this problem go away because it's inconvenient for me? I don't want you to be sad because it's inconvenient for the harmony of our house. And rather than leaning into it and saying, I'm sorry for you and I'm sad for you too, and it's okay for us to be sad about this and be frustrated and angry, and that we have to just accept those emotions. But instead of you're trying to make it go away, you're kind of just taking those things and saying, get rid of these. We're not going to be sad about this. We're going to fix it, right? And you never like you never really like hold on to that stuff. And there's a scene in the movie, if you've never seen it, Inside Out, Pixar movie, but different emotions. And in the end, they're all wondering what's the point of sadness as an emotion. It doesn't seem like sadness has much utility. But in the end, it's sadness that helps the main character, the girl, understand what she's running away from, and she said, like, she's running away from her family, and that she doesn't know what she'd do without them, and she's scared, and like she misses them, right? She's sad for them to be gone. She's sad that she's had to move and is in this new town and everything, but that sadness actually helps her come back to her senses and find her family. And it's a very like heartfelt moment, but like, the Joy character tries to make everything happy, right? And fix things all the time by just trying to make people laugh and stuff. But it's good for a while, and then it kind of runs out, and it's not useful anymore. So
yeah, absolutely. A lot of good stuff in there. Each emotion, I guess, is our teacher. It has very important life lessons to teach us. Every experience, every emotion. And I guess scripture is really useful in this way, because in that book is the entire human experience. Our greatest triumphs and our greatest depravities, all and everything in between, it's all in there. There's no life you could live that isn't in that book already. The only difference you could really grant would be like technology. But then it's still the same thing, but on a different order of magnitude, I guess. Once upon a time, the wheel was all the rage, the new technology, right? For example.
You just raise the floor and ceiling, but like relatively speaking, you're kind of in a band, the good and the bad, right?
Yeah, yeah. So there's always something to be had in there. And all of these experiences, all these emotions, they teach us something about what it is to be human. And if you're lucky, you catch those glimpses of God along the way.
And that's something that I try to open myself up to that more. I'd be completely honest, like, even though we're doing this podcast and I'm trying to connect more, with my faith, and that's, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this. It's maybe some selfish reasons, I guess, but like, just, but I would say that I have yet to have like that really like spiritual experience. I think I'm still a little like walled off. Like I can feel it.
Scribe like or
Yeah.
Scribbler?
I don't know,
Scribbler
I'm
like?
so scribbled. I'm too scribed. Like I don't know. Like I'm a very logical person, very analytical type, and so that means that I'm kind of anchored a lot in the kind of physical realm of things, and it serves me well in solving, your kind of mathematical problems and things of that nature, strategic issues and what have you. But in terms of emotional availability and sort of connecting with, um, my spirituality and other people and what have you, like there's something there. There's a wall there that's kind of in the way of, I think it's something that I'd love to break down at some point, but I'm not really necessarily sure how. But it's definitely something that I know is there, and it makes like these situations like today, I think harder to manage than they otherwise would.
Your lack of discovery, you mean, makes it harder?
Lack of self-discovery in the spiritual sense, yes. I don't have that, like that's almost like it's unavailable to me in some fashion.
Mm.
Like if I'm being completely honest, right? So this conversation with my wife, I can't remember the last time I cried. Like, that's a good example, right? So it's been, I think the last time, and I can't even remember what year this was, and I should, but my cousin passed away, and we were friends, and so I must have been early 20s, 22 or 3, so over a decade ago. And I bawled my eyes out then, and I've had a lot of things happen in between that I should have been more sad about, and I haven't, right? And so I don't know why, but it's just like, and I mean, my families were a little stiff, I guess, maybe emotionally in many ways, but yeah, so that is something that, and it's not something we need to get in, like, we won't tangle all that today, but it is something that I want to share because it's just hard to say what it is. It's like this sort of emotional blockade.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you're not alone in
Mhm.
that. We all, to some degree or another, have that pull your boots up kind of mentality. And, there's a lot of positives about that too. It's not just strictly a negative way to deal with things. I don't know quite really what to say about, what you were looking for with this and whether that happens or not. And I remember we talked about this in the early days, like, what makes this a success? Is it cranking out like 10 little bites a week, or getting a podcast out every week, or what's it going to be? And I remember just, we talked about, if it's meaningful for people, that's what makes it a success. If it does something good for one person, it's worth doing. But it's also an intellectual endeavor too, on some level, right? Like, we're discussing ideas. We've done a level of planning. There's an administrative side to it. And I guess profound spiritual moments usually tend to happen in silence, I guess, or when things are quiet enough that you can hear the still small voice inside. I forget which passage that's from, but there's a reference in the Old Testament to describing God as the still small voice deep inside. So I wonder, what do you do for David time?
Oh, don't. Small, quiet, silent periods, non-existent.
Well,
Yeah.
whether it's quiet or not, like, what do you do for you, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, the main things for me is, well, lately, been playing a lot of chess.
Oh yeah, I saw a pic. That looks great. I'd love to play with you guys.
Yeah, well, bring it on. I'm terrible, but I keep getting thumped by this 1100 rank bot. Just every time. I cannot beat this stupid thing. I don't understand what I'm doing, but no, I love games, like board games and playing cards and all that kind of stuff. I always find that that's just it's just fun to dig into those kind of things. They're intellectually stimulating, and I they distract me from other stuff in the world. I can just get into that, and it's really fun for me.
Does that usually require other people though?
Well, I mean, I can play the chess on the computer, for instance, right? But like a board game sit down kind of thing, it tends to sometimes require other people who maybe aren't as interested in it as I am. So and like what I used to do a lot, and the pandemic has thrown it off, was write. I wrote a novel, almost finished a second one, and I was writing on the GO train to and from the office. And then now that we're working from home, I actually feel like I'm working longer hours. And I don't have any private time to do that writing. Like the GO train ride to and from work was like 45 minutes long each way. That was really good, like me time of just, you put the headphones on, you listen to music, and you write. And I could write pretty prolifically, like, I could get close to 1,000 words a train ride. So, you get a couple thousand words a day, that's not bad. And so you can have a first draft of a book done in 1 to 2 months. So, and I don't have that anymore. And I just have I have like no real motivation to get even into it these days, because there isn't by the time I have time, it's like 9 o'clock at night. I'm like, do I want to sit down and start trying to get the creative juices flowing at 9 at night when I'm tired and sucked out by my day?
Mm-hmm.
So that is definitely something that's missing. And even if we go back into the office and stuff, it's probably going to be like a hybrid type work environment where it's only 2 or 3 days a week. And so it's not even like the same regularity that I had before. So I have to find a way to get back to that. But as it stands right now, I just don't feel motivated to jump back into it. It's like not something that I'm feeling excited to dive back into. But I started writing and wrote my first book when I was going through some real dark times. I was depressed, and so I started writing, and that was a real good therapy for me. And like a lot of great ideas that come out of that, and imagery and things that I could use. And so it's something that probably is missing, that I need to rediscover, find a way that I can carve out time to do that. But as it stands right now, I'm not trying to like thrive. I'm just trying to survive through this period of time. So
yeah,
I'm not going to put too much pressure on myself. I guess the other thing I learned is don't. What happened was it started to become work, right? Because it wasn't about writing for the fun of writing. It became writing to try to get the next book done, and I started to just feel fried by it, because it became like, okay, get on the train at 20 after 7 and work on your book, then get to the office and work from 8:15 to 5 o'clock, and then get on the train and work until you get off the train at 6. And so you're basically working from 7 to 6 every day, like 11-hour days. It's like a 55-hour work week or whatever. So it started to get really tiring.
Yeah. Then you got to put your dad and husband hat on, and that's work too.
Yeah, I mean, you come home and you got to just you got to stay tuned up, right? Otherwise, you're just being you're not being a good family man. So you can burn yourself out real fast. And it'd be great to write full time, but that's a romantic notion, and that's a very difficult career to get into. And
Mm-hmm.
I like my job too. So if it's not anything that my day job is gratifying in its own ways, and it's got difficult days and stuff like that too. But it scratches a different itch, so to speak. So I got to find out how I'm going to reconnect with that, but it's unclear at this point.
I guess I came up with a bit of a dad hack a few months back.
Okay.
I'm a night owl typically in my life. That's been the case.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, I'm like, oh, how great would it be to just get up early? But I could never do it.
Mm-hmm.
Then one day I started going to bed earlier, and just so I could wake up earlier before everyone's up, and
Yep.
just take some time that don't have to be anything for anybody, don't have to do anything for anybody time.
Yep.
And that was kind of in, the depths of the dark winter, I guess, when I finally was able to turn the switch on that. And that's been a big, big difference in the last few months that I've been able to do that. That way your energy's up.
Yep.
You can spend it on you. And funny enough, that energizes you even more to then go about your day and help all the people that you want to help and be there for all the people that you want to be there for. And you're not leaving yourself as a last resort when you're tired at the end of the day. Next thing you know, you're sitting on the couch. You're like, oh man, I wish I had the energy to do the things I love, but there's no juice left in the tank.
Yeah.
So see if you can try and do something for yourself first in the morning before the demands of the day are on you. And I bet that would open up some things in your mind. We hope you found your time nourishing and life-giving. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. If you would like to hear more and support the podcast and Peace Lutheran Church, please consider donating at the link in the description. For DW, I'm Pastor Ronnie Smith. Peace be with you.